What is Dan Campbell's greatest weakness? I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think of it in your mind. Go. I promise there wasn't audio problems. That was an actual 5 seconds. Seems like forever, doesn't it, in this fast paced world? Dan Campbell, I think if a lot of you, and you can comment what you think below, I think a lot of us would say that the thing we're worried about most about Dan Campbell and his greatest weakness would be clock management, would be decision making, especially late in games. I think he helped a lot of that by declining a offsides penalty against the Green Bay Packers. But I was left wondering, like, yeah, but how often does he make the right decision? I know earlier in the year when we went 1-6, a lot of us were very mad at the amount of times he was going for it on fourth down. It seemed like he was coaching a Madden team, right? And it was just like, no matter what happens, go for it. Doesn't matter if we're on our own 30, on their 30, on the one. It doesn't matter. Like, go for it on fourth down. I think a lot of us felt frustrated about that. And then we went 8-2 down the stretch, and a lot of it changed. Well, in the world we live in today, statistics are king. And there is a statistic out there that talks about win percentage above average by each coach based on the way in which and the situation in which they went for it on fourth down. So Dan Campbell seems like a guy who's just going for it all the time. And there's an element of luck in all these kind of things, but there was an algorithm out there, and I would like to show this to all of you. So this is an algorithm where it's how much win probability added over expected each head coach and their staff added during the 22-23 seasons. All right. So here's what it all looks like. And the only two people that were ahead of the Lions in this were Nick Sirianni in the Eagles and Sean McDermott in the Bills. Just saying, those are two pretty good teams. The number 2 seed in the AFC, the number 1 in the NFC. But our win probability added over expected was 45.2%. Things went our way, and we did a great job getting that win percentage added over what was expected. So here's what I want to say about this. You know what? I'll leave this up there in case you want to keep reading it. All right, in case you want to keep reading it. In fact, I'll even get to the point where I try and get it a little closer zoomed in for you so you can see those stats a little bit better. This is what we all say Dan Campbell's bad at. This is the struggle. I've had friends say to me, Dan Campbell's a good coach. He's a great motivator. But if you guys want to get over the hump when you get a lot of talent, you're going to have to get a different coach than Dan Campbell because he doesn't know how to manage the game well. This is a stat that actually shows the exact opposite, and I'm really excited about that. Is there a level of luck in it? Maybe, but they don't take into account in this the talent of the team or anything like that. It's just straight up doesn't make sense. And did it work? And so, yeah, there's some luck that's in it, but at the same time, I really wouldn't consider that a big deal. So here we have Dan Campbell, master motivator, can put together a great staff, has great connections around the league. We all talk about this. What we don't talk about enough is Dan Campbell's X's and O's and Dan Campbell's in-game decision-making. Before Ben Johnson came back, and he announced that he was coming back to Detroit because he feels like they're building something special here. By the way, a genius like Ben Johnson doesn't just come back if his boss isn't also a genius. I want to make that clear. It's not that he's just a fun guy to be around. This is Ben Johnson's livelihood. But I was making a video, and it was going to go out the morning that I found out that Ben Johnson was coming back, saying, if Ben Johnson leaves, don't worry, Lions fans, this is Dan Campbell's offense. Dan Campbell still runs this show. I think when you look at Sean Payton, the system that Dan Campbell came from, he was around a great offensive mind for a long time. And he was the assistant coach. Like he was there. And so he was around that. He knows the game. He played for a long time in the NFL. Don't act like this guy doesn't know offense. Don't act like this guy doesn't know when situationally to go for what. It was a great marriage between him and Ben Johnson because Ben Johnson had the play calls. He had this. But no matter what, every week, Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson are spending a large amount of time together. They're putting together the offensive game plan. They're putting together how they're going to attack their opponent. And neither one of them leaves that room until they're both satisfied with what the other one has to say. This is not just Ben Johnson's offense and Ben Johnson's team. Dan Campbell has a huge part in putting that together. So when you take an offensive mind that has that good of success rate, it only makes sense that the decision making when it comes to the offensive side of the ball makes sense as well. It only makes sense that the things like that we're talking about with when to go for it on fourth down, when situationally to go, when not to go, that we'd have a good feel for it because he is so heavily involved in the offense. It's just he's not the one that's calling every single play, but he knows what's going on. He knows what the game plan is. So I want to just take a moment and say, hey, Dan Campbell, his weak spot, actually this year was a strong spot. It was a area of strength. So let's just take that into account when we're looking at the next one, and maybe realize that this is a more well-rounded head coach than a lot of people give him credit for. All right, hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think, and we will see you on the next one.